Okay, my last recording had audio settings all screwed up, so we got that fixed now. So I deleted that on YouTube. Yeah, bummer. But I'm going to do a code review here of everything we did yesterday. Right? The only thing that I did in the video that won't be covered here, um, at least at a high level, is I created a repo for the React front end, and I did the npm create vite at latest command to kind of build this up, a template for React using this vite page. And so it all starts, what we did yesterday, with React Router. And so we installed a dependency called React Router DOM. And so you're going to notice there's a couple of steps to get React Router DOM working. The first thing here is to wrap the app tag inside of this browser router tag. Just means that the routing will be handled by the client browser. Okay. So that's kind of the first thing you got to do is you got to install the dependency of React Router DOM, bring in browser router, and wrap your app, which is essentially the root node or the root component of all of our children components that we'll have. Then inside of app, we started making some various components yesterday. We made a book list component and we put it inside of a components folder. We made a login form component and a navbar component. So you can start to see we've got these children components inside of app. One child being the navbar, another child, depending on what you navigate to, is a book list, or if you navigate to a login route, you show the login form. So going back to React Router, there's a couple of elements here inside of app that we brought in. We brought in the routes, which is obviously the parent to the route tag, which the route tag says, hey, when you navigate to this URL, to this relative URL, then what do you display inside of the main tag, right? So if a user were to navigate to the home path, we're going to show the book list. If they were to navigate to the login URL, let's show them the login form. And right now we're just got this dummy contact page that doesn't do anything. Okay, so we brought in React Router and we defined some routes. We did a little, I guess you would consider it just page layout with Flexbox. So, kind of we made a root element that is a container. So all of our markup is inside of a container, which back in HTML you often see those called wrappers. That's a Bootstrap class. And we told that container to display flex and to be a column and to be 100% of the viewport height. So if the content is not very long, you still get a page that is kind of top to bottom. And then what we did is we said, hey, main, do a flex grow of 1. And so if you kind of look at the children here of our div, we've got a header, we've got a main, and we've got a footer. So header will have some amount of height, footer will have some amount of height, and then main, because of this class, will take up the remaining space. And so that's kind of a simple trick to get an easy page layout with Flexbox that takes up 100% of the viewport height, regardless of if you're on a big monitor, a small monitor, yada yada. Okay, so that's a nice responsive way of doing a little layout there. Okay, so then that's really all the code that we did as we introduced this React Router DOM. The next thing we did was we made a book list component, and that book list component, if we kind of glance at it, Eventually, we're going to break this down into a list of items. Right now, it's just a list. We could have like individual book items that we'll get this into, but well, let's kind of take a look at what we have in book list. In book list, we have a hook. So we have the use state hook, and by default, that's an empty array. And this use effect is essentially being used when this component loads. You can think of this use effect as when this component loads, run use effect. Okay, now it's more complicated than that, but like at a introductory level, that's how you could think of it. Okay, this is going to run when the component loads. The component loads when they go to the URL. Then we brought in this dependency called Axios. So we did an npm install Axios. And we said, hey, when the component loads, hit our backend. And we had to add this with credentials of true. And I'll explain that. We didn't do that immediately. We did that kind of towards the end of the video yesterday. Now, this is kind of structured with a then and a catch block. So this is very much structured like a promise. And so this is the Axios. This is a way of working with promises in Axios. Again, then and catch. This method returns a promise for data. Okay. It's worth noting that we could refactor this to be asynchronous, right? So this is Axios working with promises. The way promises work is there's a then block, which if this request works, the then block runs. But if this request does not work and it doesn't hit the database for whatever reason, then you get a catch block. Okay? And you can kind of see in the successful case, we're just setting the books to response.data. And so the response object has a data, and the data is the JSON that comes from the back end. Okay, so in our hook, our books hook will now have the data from our back end route, which is API books list. We can then write a little bit of kind of a if-else statement. If there's no length of books, then tell the user no books to display. Otherwise, use a JavaScript mapping function to map each book and just put this a little bit of markup. We'll refactor this to look good. But for right now, this is what the book list looks like. Now, I refactored my backend yesterday to say, hey, don't even worry about the logins, right? Because we have a backend right now, and I put it back on. So if you guys look at the list route, yesterday we actually took off these two middlewares. On the list route, we took these off, and now you could see they're back on. Okay, so we did write the code to support these by the end of yesterday. Okay, so you can feel free to put those back on. They should be working in the current case. Back on my front end, this with credentials, keep in mind we're using what are called server-side cookies. We're not using client-side cookies. Server-side cookies, if you kind of go to the server user.js, and if you remember the functions that we wrote a function to create a token, put the token in the cookie, and this line right here, res.cookie, right? Res is the response object that goes to the client. Res.cookie says send a cookie to the client. The cookie that we're sending down is auth token, and it has in it our JWT token called auth token. And then we got some options which says HTTP only of true. HTTP only of true says that this is a server-side cookie that the client side should not access, right? There's different kinds of cookies. Again, there's client-side cookies and there's server-side cookies. Server-side cookies are just using this cookie to maintain state with the client. Like, we want to remember who you are. Okay, so we're just maintaining state here because HTTP is stateless by default. HTTP only of true is an important thing there for security, and it is again, it's a server-side cookie only. And we got a max age of, I think that boils down to like 1 hour. 1 second times 60 seconds times 60 minutes, 1 hour. So our cookie will last for 1 hour. Okay, now, I had to, okay. This line right here, with credentials of true, this is the client-side code. The client, you have to first get the client to receive the cookie. With credentials of true says, send that cookie back to the server so that the server has the auth token from the client. So this was the one line of code that was kind of hanging us up yesterday, because I personally was getting the cookie from the server to the client, but then you have to send it back to the server. So I had to add on my use effect, I said, hey, go ahead and pass their credentials, and that will be so that these middlewares is logged in and has permission, so that these will work, because again, that auth token is stored in the cookie, and our middleware uses that cookie to create rec.auth. Okay, so this is the code there. Now let's look at the nav bar. Nav bar is pretty simple. This is just really no complexities here. The one thing we did here is we changed all of our anchor tags inside of our unordered list to nav links, and the href attribute becomes the to attribute. So nav link to instead of a href. Okay, and that's just React router, and again, it kind of goes back to the page doesn't refresh at that point. You just kind of go from page to page without a visual refresh. And so it's snappy, it's fast. That's one major benefit of React router. So our nav bar is pretty basic. On the login form, did a couple of things here. This login form, first we had our markup. So what are we looking at here? We're essentially looking at a couple of text boxes, right, where we're setting some hooks. So we have an email hook and a password hook. Up here, here's our email and password. We have a third hook for any errors that we want to display to the user. When the user clicks the submit button to try and log in, right? So nothing too fancy here, just some very standard hooks. When the user clicks the submit button, we call this function onSubmitLogin. We make sure to prevent the default error, prevent the default form submission, right? We're going to use Axios to submit our form. We do a little custom validation, right? We check for email errors, we check for password errors, and if our email or password are incorrect, we do some client-side validation here. And then you notice we return out of the function, so we do not continue executing this function anymore if there are errors. If there's no errors, then we go ahead and do our Axios.post, right? The last Axios was Axios.get. This is Axios.post. We're posting to the login route. And just like last time, we are saying, hey, pass our, include the credentials. And so when we were logging in, I think that line right there, if I'm remembering what I did correctly yesterday, without this with credentials here, I was not receiving my cookie from the server. So when I logged in, I had to add this with credentials of true here to get the server and actually receive it on the client. And then you could use your credentials in subsequent requests for data. And just like we did last time, if it's a successful login, we do a console.log of response.data. We're going to refactor this into actually doing some things here if the user successfully logs in, right? We're going to navigate them to another page, what have you. Otherwise, we give them an error. So it's worth noting in its current state, if the user logs in or not, we're just getting a console message. It's also worth noting that this error object is a complex beast, and handling errors from our back end, we're gonna have to work through that, okay? Because if Joy sends us an error, it's kind of like way nested down in there, and how to display that error to the user is another thing. Okay, so let's run this. I do have my back end running, and I do have my front end running. And so if I kind of go here right off the top of the bat, I'm not logged in. Or if I am logged in, which I am, I'm logged in without permissions to display the book. So let me go ahead and click on login. I'm going to open up my console and just show this off in the current state. Now, notice I'm getting some errors because I just navigate to home and they don't have the permissions if you're not logged in. Now, if I go ahead and log in as myself, I have a bunch of permissions. I think I have 3 roles. I have all the roles. The one permission that you need is can list books. Right, that's the one permission. So if I go ahead and log in, notice I get a welcome message to the console. So I am logged in, and notice my cookie comes back. Okay, now in your coding, this is going to be an important first step. You're going to need to log in. That login is going to need to send the client a cookie. Okay, you can even see the cookie is called auth token. That's an important first step, and it is HTTP only. And now that I'm logged in, notice I can get to my books. I'm going to have to refactor this and the fact that I got a bunch of the same books. Don't know how that happened, but whatever. Now, what happens if I go to log in with, well, that's a bad email address, and whatever, my password, you're going to notice I get an error message here. And if you drill down here in the response, data, email, or password incorrect, right? So if it's an invalid login attempt, we're getting this response back from our server. If I log in as Bob Duncan, Bob Duncan does not have the permission can list books. Okay, he has a role that does not have that permission. Notice I can log in as Bob Duncan, but yet when I go home, error code 403. Error code 403 is forbidden. You do not have permissions. And you can again kind of drill down into this. Into the data, you do not have the permissions can list books. Okay, so effectively, this is where we left off. Let me see if there's any bit of code that I didn't cover. Again, the one-liner that's much simpler to code is this with credentials. I believe now just as testing, just to test this, if I were to cut that out, I'm just going to cut that and save. Okay, so I remove that one line of code. I'm going to delete my client-side cookie. Okay, I'm going to go back to login and see if that is the one. I think that's the one line that I added. Okay, so I'm welcomed back in, And notice no cookies here. Okay, so that is the one line that you got to make sure that when you log in, you include that line so that cookie comes from the server and is received on the client. And again, I'm just really pleased with this current implementation because the way I did this over the summer, because I did this over the summer, was I took that server-side cookie, and the client's not supposed to be able to read it, but I found a package that was actually able to do so, and I kind of found a back door, and I was like parsing the cookie on the client in a little bit more detail. But this is a much simpler solution. Okay, so that's just a review. I wanted to take that review, kind of give everyone a chance to catch up on the code. Now I'm going to come around with everyone, and for anyone interested in coding along and troubleshooting any problems you're having, I'm going to take a minute and do that with you guys. One more thing I did yesterday I forgot to talk about today. I did refactor my backend to include a new dependency. Okay, so you guys might remember this. We did an install of this CORS dependency, and CORS is, I believe it stands for Cross Origin Resource Scripting, something to that extent. I'm close if it's not exact, something to that. And the idea is that you got a front end and a back end that aren't in the same location. They're on different URLs. In this case, they're just coming from different ports on localhost. But we have to say that that's okay. By default, different systems should not play nice together. You should allow these different systems to play nice together. Okay, in other words, by default, security is high, and you're going to say it's actually okay to work with, and so I did app.use CORS, and I added this origin of localhost. This is the port that I'm on. You're going to have to refactor that at some point to be a live URL. And then I also said credentials of true, and I believe this credentials of true deals with passing credentials. There's a login system here, and I would venture to say that if you don't have that on your back end of credentials of true, it's the same thing. That cookie I don't think would be sent. Again, we could test that, but I added that on my server JS, and I added it above my routes. Okay, we talked about that a little bit yesterday, but here on my server, those are a couple of things we also did. Okay, so a couple of things to start considering is, well, right now, if our client-side validation passes, we get an error right here, right? But if we actually send data off to the server, and it's a bad credentials, that's still client-side. If I send something off to the server, this is being logged by our catch block. And so this is just bad username and password. If we kind of dig into here, we see there's a response, data, and then there's a value of email or password is incorrect. And so let's just handle that case where it's a bad username and password, and instead of logging it here, let's put it in the page and say bad username and password. So this is back in the front end. So let me get in my front end code. Close that. Minimize that. My front end code is right here. And here's my Axios request. If it's good, we do this. If it's bad, we do that. And let's kind of see how that is. So there's a response object inside of error. So we got error.response dot data. So like if I were to do error.response.data, let's do a console log error.response.data. So now if it's just a bad username and password, let's see if I can just throw that in the console. Let me clear that out. Okay. So I extracted the information out of the response. It's useful in this case. And now I just got to get that on the screen, right? This is our error. And there's a way of checking this. You could say, okay, if there's an error, let's do const response error equals that. You say if res error. Now here you can say, okay, if there's an error, if there's a response, if there's data. So if there's an error object is truthy, if there's a response object in there, and if there's data in there, put it in response error, res error, and then instead of console logging it here, we just do set error. Okay, now I'm just gonna put a little note here. I say bad username and or password. And see if I got that right. So now, okay, email or password incorrect. Client-side validation. There's another side of validation, right? So ultimately, this is coming from our client yet. What'd I do?
I have that same error.
Okay, well, I gotta see what I did. So somewhere.
It has apparently decided that if you do not have the @ symbol in your email, it might just shut down.
Yeah, let's find where that bug is, right? Okay.
You need a second field.
You need a second field? Oh, if you just do a at.
It would break. You need two fields and you need a
Oh,
name and a
no.
domain.
I did just Evan said without anything else, and then the password and hit submit.
You did this?
It shouldn't let
Yep.
you go through without the @ symbol because that's what made it not do that.
I don't know, it has.
Yeah, so mine when I just type my name. So again, here's a bug, right? Here's a bug worth working through. If I do this is posting and objects are not valid. Object found with keys error if you meant to use a collection. So now let's look at something here. Let me refresh and let me just put a bad one in again. All right, so let's do that. Let's post to the server. We're getting that. I'm gonna put this back in a console log. Error dot response. dot data. No, I don't want to put the dot data. I just want to put error dot response.
You have 3 R's in there. 4 R's.
Okay, so now I expand that.
Oh.
Okay. I think I have a little bit more coding that I think will fix this bug. Okay, I think I can fix this. But let's not, for the case right now, here's what I'm looking for. If you put in a full URL and 8 characters long that are invalid, you should get email or password incorrect. Okay, so we've handled that case where we're giving a full email, something at domain.com or whatever. We know that there's a bug in there if you don't include the full thing. Certainly we could write client-side validation that fixes that, and then that wouldn't crash anymore. You wouldn't be able to post that to the server. Now, we have some other validation that we might hit, which is, let's go to user login, and we've got a login Joy schema. So let's remind ourselves what's in there. Email is required, and password is required. And so maybe that's crashing because we're sending that to Joy, and it's like, that's not an email.
Yeah, I actually did research on the email tag.
Uh-huh.
Certain things.
The email function here.
That email function.
Uh-huh.
The email function requires both at minimum it's 2 fields, but you do need a domain as .com,
You do need-
.org or whatever. Otherwise
Yeah.
it crashes.
Yeah, so I think what's happening is it's actually passing our client-side validation, and I think it's hitting our Joy validation, and I think that's really tripping it up. So here's what we do to fix that. Well, right now, our data is a string, right? So we can do a little something like this. Right now, data, in the case of a string, if it's a string, then we need to display the string. There. And so we could do like, okay. If res error is truthy, and if type of res error is string, then we set the error. Okay, so what was happening there, I think, is Joy was sending us back a Joy validation crash, and res error was not a string. So then we were trying to set the error to something that wasn't a string. We were trying to set the error to like an object, and it's like, I don't know how to handle that. And so now, if we kind of refresh this, and I say, and I say bad password, we get bad password. But if I just say here, now we're not crashing it anymore because that Joy validation is not sending us back a string. Let's look at what Joy sends us back. Notice what I'm logging is oh, what am I logging? I'm logging the response. So inside of response, data, error. Okay, now we're inside of data. Now I'm inside of error. Notice that there's a details here. And then notice what's coming back. Details is an array with a message. So we need to handle different types coming from our back end. If we receive a string, then it's bad username and password. If we receive data error details array, then there's ultimately our error message. You guys with me on that one? So string is basically bad username or password. Else if res error has a details, if details is truthy. Now Joy can send back multiple. But let's just do this. Details sub0.message. Let's just, Joy could send back multiple errors, but let's just display the first error. So if there's a details array, again, there was a message property, details array message, and then that will say email must be valid email. And if res error, let me save that. Something went, I missed something. Again, data error details. So we got data, data.error.details. Data I believe .error.details I believe is right. Email must be valid email. Now we're getting the validation from Joy and we're displaying that. All right, so what I had to do is I had to trace the path all the way. Res error is error, response, data. Look how many layers deep we're going here, folks. Error is our object. It has response, it has data, response, then we have error, then we have details. We're going pretty deep there. So here, this else if is for Joy validation errors. Now, it is possible, since details is an array. Connor, you gave me a head shake. You want me to help you out?
Fixed it.
You fixed it. Cool. Everyone following me so far? So far, so good? No? Okay. Okay. This could be flushed out more. Okay. And what if we have an array of Joy validation errors, maybe we would map each error to display each error, right? To display all errors. And so you would essentially loop over your errors array and make a string, if you will, concatenated string with each error. Okay, so I think you guys could figure that out. But that's, at least a start of, okay, we now have a login system that's handling our errors with both front side validation and back side validation. which kind of says, okay, well here, if we're needing to log in to display our books, maybe our error message should reflect that. Like, here our book list should say, please log in to see books. Please log in to see books. And then maybe we can like make that login a link. Import link from React Router DOM. And then we say link nav link. Now there's link and there's nav link. I think we want link, right? Nav link versus link. Nav link is in your nav bar, right? So if I go to my nav bar, I've got nav links, and nav links have the ability to set the active link, set the active whatever page you're on, which we're not really doing that right now, but we can do that. Whereas a link doesn't set like an active page. So here I just want to create a link element and link to /login. Let me see. I don't know if we want any classes on that or not. But now it's saying please log in. Now, obviously we need permissions too, so a simple login, I don't know, do all your users see the books? Probably. Do you really need to log in to see the books? Probably not, right? If you're really selling stuff, maybe you don't make people log in, but we're just going with this, right? So now we say log in. Let's see, no refresh. So please log in to see books. And right now, okay, so now when I log in, okay, on success, how about we actually just take you back home, like on a successful login, right? So this is on our login form. Why don't we navigate the user home? So instead of just doing this with our success, why don't we navigate the user to somewhere else, like to the home tab, right? So on login, success, the way that we can do that is with use navigate. So I'm going to import use navigate from React Router DOM. And here we instantiate a variable called navigate, calling this function. So now we got this navigate function. I think this function turns that into a function. So let's navigate to root. I don't really need that right now. So now on a success, I guess we can keep it console logging. We'll do a little bit more with this, but now on a successful login, it sends you back home. And let's see. Inspect console Hit that. Okay, navigation home, and it welcomes the user. All right, the next thing I would pretty much expect would be like my username up in the nav bar now that I'm logged in, and the ability to log out. Right, so let's save the username. Well, the username isn't really being sent. My email is being sent, but my username's not being sent. So either I can refactor that. Yeah, Jack.
Could you go back to how you do the login?
Yeah. So, you mean the navigate?
No, in the login message display if you're not logged in. Like.
Oh, okay, yeah, yep. So that was on my book list. There you go. So a lot of times you log in and your login fella is in the nav bar, like your username is in the nav bar. So nav bar is a component that is a child of app. Right? So there's my navbar component, child of app. So you're going to receive the username on the login form. So login form and navbar are siblings, right? In the hierarchy. These are siblings. And you can't pass data from sibling to sibling. You can only pass data down. Right? So I might store my user name, whatever I want about my user, I might store that in the hook, right? So I might make a const, I don't know, user, not books. I might set user and set user, and maybe this is the user name, maybe this is the user object, I don't know. You know, but when I log in my user, keep in mind what's coming back is a message, a token, which isn't really useful for us, and an email. Well, we'll just say user email. How about that? Const user email, set user email. How about that? And so set user email. We need to be able to set the user email when they log in. So here's my login form. I'm going to have a prop called set user email equals curly set user email. Right? That's going to allow the user to change this variable down here in the login form. So let me receive that in my login form, curly's set user email. And well, we've got the email right here. I don't know. Email. Do we want to say welcome Bob or welcome Bob Duncan at gmail.com? How about username? Right? Let's do username. Just because we already have email here on the client side, I want to say let's use the data that's being sent from our server. So back up. We'll just call it the given name, right? We could do full name. We could do given name. Sure, full name. Full name. Set full name. And we're going to send the mutator method down, set full name. So you got to change it here, right? And then on the login form, you have to receive set full name. Okay. Then you got to go into your back end. And then when the user logs in, we got a message, we got an auth token, we have an email. Let's add the full name, comma, full name, result user full name. Well, right, but that also has the word welcome in it. I don't want the word welcome in it. I just want the full name. Right? But do what you will. I'm just so now the response is coming back with the user's full name property from our back end. So let's go to the front end. And I could say we've got response.data. And so we should be able to set full name, response.data.fullname. So down in our login function, we're setting the full name. But now we got to get that into our navbar. Right? So full name is here in app, but I got to send it down to navbar. So we'll say Curly's full name. We're going to send full name down. Full name equals full name. So you can send variables down. And then we'll bring in full name here into our navbar. And we'll have a little full name. If there's a full name, then what do we do? Then we make give them an option to log out. That makes some good sense. How about another one? We need a closing LI here. And then I'm going to make another one just saying somewhere, I don't know whether you actually put this in an LI, but LI class name. Yeah, how about that? We could say navigate to your profile. This is really good. Navigate to your profile and log out. So once the user is logged in, navigate to your profile or log out. Of course, your profile will have options to update me. Hit the update me route. So kind of testing this, clear it out, refresh. We're missing a closing LI maybe. Sure are. Closing the LI. Now in this case, we don't have a root. So we'll give them a root and make them happy. Okay, I'm probably just gonna need to start back over. I'm gonna kind of delete my cookie here and we'll log myself in. And now you can kind of see my name's up here and I got a tab for logging out. Yes.
That's what this is.
These are going good. Kind of a common thing that I see is that you want like this profile and this off to the right. So I'm also noticing here that my books are being displayed because of my cookie, but I'm not persisting my full name. Right? My full name is not persisting because you would need to save that in local storage. Okay, so it's just noticing that my cookie is still here, But if I delete my cookie, then I don't get access to the books. But you literally got to go through and log in to get these links to show up, because that's a hook. That data is not persisting. So that's just the current functionality, and we could fix that. But kind of what I want to do is I want to get this to the right side of the nav bar, because that's kind of more normal. I feel like you got your normal nav links over here, and then getting these two links off to the right. So that can be done again a little bit with some Flexbox. And so let's go ahead and make a navbar CSS. I'm going to do a little custom CSS with this. And so we'll say navbar CSS. And then I'm going to import my /navbar CSS. And I just always like to, since this is, maybe the class of nav, I'll just throw the class of nav on here and say background color is pink, just to make sure things are linking up good. And now we got a pink nav bar. Okay, so that's linked up properly. And so the first thing you'll notice, I've got these nav tabs, and so I'm going to target my nav tabs and display flex and justify content space between. And so let's kind of see the result of that. All right, so we kind of get 3 tabs. I'm just kind of curious now if I log in what this looks like, just kind of as we add. Okay, so yeah, kind of what I'm looking for, but let's try a couple more things. Back here down in my conditional JSX, I'm going to make this a UL, like a nested UL. And add a class name of nav, oops, sorry, no. This doesn't need to be a UL. Make that a div, excuse me, div. I'm looking at some code over here. Okay, so the div with a class name of nav item group. So we're just going to target this div with that class and close that properly. Okay, so now instead of just having that empty tag, we've got this, so we could target these links and apply some custom styling there. Yep, there's my CSS. And I'm going to target that div with nav item group. Tell him to display flex. And set a gap. And so this is going to be my starting point. I think I'm going to have to tweak this. But the gap is going to obviously set space of 10 pixels, probably not enough, but let's, that's more of line of what I was looking for. So I'm cool with that. So right now I don't have a logout route, right? So I could just refactor this nav link into an HTML button, and I don't need it to go anywhere, and close the button. And it's going to be styled as a nav link. So let's see. let's log my fella in. Submit. Okay, so it looks just the same. But now we could put a click handler on it. And then I get to figure out how to clear that cookie. So I'm going to say on click equals curly's EBT. On click log out EBT. So here, function on click logout. I don't have a logout route. So I need to clear the server-side cookie. And so maybe I need to have a logout route. So I'm just going to tab that in and kind of comment it out for now. As maybe something to look into. Again, this is kind of the newer I'm going to look into this. All right, so I have come to the conclusion that I want to write a little server-side logic to clear my cookie. Because it's HTTP only, and so you'll need server-side logic to do that. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to say router.post logged out. How about that? That's pretty simple. Res.clearCookie. My cookie is named auth token. And then the message comes back logged out. Now, of course, you have to be logged in to log out. Okay, so now that we have a log out route, well, it's kind of close with the code here, but we're not using fetch, right? We're bringing Axios in. So let's import Axios from Axios. And then this is going to be an Axios.post. And API users log out. Now, let's look at another one of our Axios methods here, where we need to send some. So here's an Axios get. Let's look at our Axios post. Probably Axios post is going to be a little bit more similar. So after the URL, we've got the data that we need to send, which is nothing. And then after that, we say with credentials of true. So like if I were to copy that, kind of what I'm looking for is with credentials to true. Dot then response catch error. And console log the response, and we can reload. So let's break this up on a couple lines. I believe we want to say response.data is what we're looking for here. Okay, so we click the logout button, prevent the default form from submitting. We then hit our back end, the logout route. We're not sending any data with credentials of true, so that's going to include the cookie. Then that should log us out and reload the window. And now we see what breaks. something's already kind of broke in here. Nope, we're up and running. And here, let's open our console. We're clearing that out. Log out, and no cookies are here. Now I do get an error message, so something didn't work right. I mean, it worked and it didn't. Kind of hard to see what's going on. So let's try again. Log in, password, submit. We are welcome. There's my username. If I click log out, oh, this is just we can't get the book list because we're not logged in. Logout's working. Cookie's gone. It's even worth noting that if you refresh, so you don't have to close the browser. If you refresh, you lose state. Bless you. Right? So if I refresh this page, I lose state. And so let's fix that. Right? So ultimately, up here in app, here's our full name. We need to use effect. And we need to, when we set the full name, let's go ahead and save our full name into local storage. So local storage, when we're setting the full name, that's on the login, so that's on the nav bar. That's on, that's not on log out. That's on login. So here's our login form. And here's set full name. And why don't we do this? So we'll say local storage dot set item. We'll say full name with response data full name. So we'll go ahead and persist that data in local storage. And back here on app, we'll bring in use state, use effect, I should say. Let's bring in use effect here. And there we go. Now, normally you see these brackets are empty, so this means run this use effect anytime the component loads. You can also put a variable in here that says, okay, now this says run use effect anytime the component loads or full name changes. Here, let's go ahead and read full name from local storage, and if there's full name, let's set full name. Now all we have to do now is delete the item called full name when the user logs out, right? So now we're persisting full name. Ooh. So just to test this as you guys are writing it, let me close and reboot. Okay, so let's just kind of start off like we've never been here before. No cookies. Login. Login is self. We should now have a local storage thing called full name with my name in it. That's good. And if I refresh the page, notice it doesn't disappear anymore. right? Because we're reading it out of local storage and just putting it back in that variable. And when that variable is populated, then we see our user on the nav bar.
Could you hit log out and see what
We have to finish that logic. We have to, when the user logs out, we need to clear full name, right? That's pretty simple. We'll clear it out of local storage and clear the variable. So then the next step says, hey, when we log out, which is what we put that on navbar, I think. When we click the log out on a successful log out, why don't we just go ahead and say set full name. Oh, we got to pass the mutator down. Right? So we don't have set full name in here. So let's go back here and pass that mutator down. Set full name equals set full name.
Don't you have it right there?
It's right next to it.
Oh, I need it on the guys. My bad. What do I need that on? I need that on the nav bar. Put it on the wrong element. Yeah? So now that I got set full name on my nav bar, let's receive it. So I go full name, comma, set full name. And then down here, I don't need to console log that. I'm going to set full name to empty. And I'm going to remove my full name out of local storage. Let's give it a spin. Okay, so it's pulling me out of local storage because that's my user that's logged in. If I click log out, voila, log in, EA Gudmested, password, I'm logged in. I can close the window, open it back up, and as long as my cookie is there, now that becomes an interesting thing. In 1 hour, my cookie expires. And I'd be interested to see what happens then. Because without the cookie, you can't get the data, right? No cookie, no data. But my local storage is still there. So what I need to do is I need to set my local storage to expire in 1 hour, right? What's up, Atticus?
Is there a way to inspect to look at the local storage?
Yeah, so to look at local storage, you right click, you go to inspect, you click on the application tab of the developer tool here, and then right there you can see full name.
F12 also works.
F12 to bring up the developer console.
Yep, that's the hot.
The hotkey is a good thing. So at one point I logged in as Bob Duncan and saved that as local storage. Don't need that anymore. And then I've got some thing here called I've got a plugin called Honey that's also not relevant, but does that answer your question? Now, I would set local storage to expire. You know, 'cause I could just foresee that where the user's still in local storage, but the cookie's not. Right? So that's just something we could dig into. Not the core thing to look at right now. So yeah, there we go. And I guess do you need to see the login link if you are logged in? Right? So maybe back in navbar. You're only displaying that LI conditionally, which is based on what? Not not full name. So if you're not logged in, you see the login link? So it says I am. You just see home and contact. Otherwise, you log out. You see the login link. You guys getting the swing of it? Did you miss something, Jack?
My thing is not pulling anything.
So where I'd like to take this next is here we're mapping our books. And let's get each one of these into rows and columns and bootstrap cards. And so for each book, you know, we could do something like now here there's an ID on my book. So this says, hey, no books, show this, otherwise show that. And I think what we can do is div ID of our class name of row. I think we can have a div outside of that. Okay, so then, okay, so we gotta, okay, we just gotta do this a little different. So just our return, delete that return and delete that there. We're gonna add the return outside of the map. That's the end of the map. This is the end of my return. And I need a root div and a closing div. Okay. Okay, that's not, something's wrong with my syntax here. Book, arrow. Give me one second to fix my syntax here. Okay. I guess we don't need the return, so we'll just get rid of the return. And then here is a curly. Let me just start. Div, class name, row. Okay. JavaScript land, books, dot map. Each book will return parentheses div key. Oh, I need one more parenthesis. I think I've been looking at so many curlies all day long. I think I'm going cross-eyed. Books.map. Book. Arrow. Parenthesis.
You need one more curly bracket before that parenthesis, I think.
There's a parentheses
Before
No,
that.
yeah, you're missing a parenthesis.
Right before that.
Thank you. Okay, so each of these, each book will be in a div, class name, call -4, and let's just get the book dot title into that. And let's pull this back up. Okay, so now I got my books into rows and columns. I think the next place to go is look at a Bootstrap card. So we're going to go to getbootstrap.com, docs. Card, and the parent is div class card, and you got card headers and you got card bodies, right? So here's our card body, you got card footers, card, image, card body. So parent is card, child is card body. You could have a list group inside of your card. There you go, kitchen sink. Has a card body. Another card body. Ooh, header and a footer. Okay, this is what I'm thinking. Card header, which puts the title in the card header. Card body, which has additional information. So let's do a card header, and a card body. Inside of card body, we have card title and card text. So div class name is card, and the div. And then we wanted a card header, div class name of card header. And then a card body. And in the card header, we can place the text of the book title. And then for now, we'll put the book description. Just inside a paragraph. Card text. So let's take a look at localhost. Starting to look like something. The first thing I'm going to do is make the delete function and delete all my repeats. So I'm getting all my novels into and maybe underneath card header, I'm going to have another class called footer. Where I'm going to put some buttons. Put a delete button on all my cards. Now we're getting somewhere. And this will be the last thing we do for today because we're kind of winding down. We'll just do one more Axios, right? Axios.delete function. So let's wire up an event handler for all of my deletes. On click. On book delete. So let's go ahead and make that function. Let's bring in it's funny, it wants to write JavaScript there. No, thank you. Axios dot delete, and let's see what my delete route needs. It needs an ID.
Also run users right now.
So let's go to my books. /delete/book ID. So now this becomes something else. So I'm going to replace this with backticks. I need the ID to pass along in here. So each book has a book ID. And so I'm going to pass that ID along with it. on this here, I'm going to send the second argument is the book dot underscore ID. And I'll receive it as book ID. And then I put book ID in here.
You don't want it and like close your secret.
So we send the book ID in. We call Axios delete with credentials. Obviously, one thing to factor, you might not show the user a delete button if they don't have the permission to delete, and that's something that we can work on. But for right now, suffice to say my user of who can delete. So if I look at my permissions here, I will modify my developer so they can delete book. So I have to add that permission since I never had that. And so if I go here, let's add a field, can delete book. To true. Okay. So now my user of Evan Gudmestead is a developer, and developers can delete books. Let me go into my back end and say has permission of can delete book. Conrad, did I hear you saying Let's
Clicking the delete button and it's returning the cannot delete.
yeah, let's see. Well, keep in mind here. Okay. So keep in mind that I can delete something out of the database, but we also have to update the UI, which updating the UI is updating our hook. We have not updated our hook.
Well, I mean,
I know we're not getting there.
no, I mean just in the response, it's returning the message in data of object, like book ID not deleted.
Not deleted. Yep, I'm with you. So let's troubleshoot this a little bit. So let's go to the console. Console, delete 403 forbidden. So probably I have to log out and log back in.
Yeah, that's a different one.
Because I was forbidden because I just added this permission to myself. Okay, so now I'm welcomed in. So let me clear the console. And now I'm getting book deleted. Now again, my UI is not refreshed because I didn't update my hook. But presumably I've got a whole bunch of Brave New Worlds. I got 7, 8 of them. And if I refresh, I've lost
How
one.
that works, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, you know.
Yeah. So delete is working, and I guess to flush that out, the last thing you should do, is probably, well, obviously give a more successful message. So here on book delete, maybe put this inside of some sort of success message. We can come back to that, but
I found my problem.
what was your problem?
Deleting the book that I forwarded.
Right. Deleting a book. Yep, that won't work. So the thing that we want to do is also update our UI by also changing our books hook. So this is kind of when the page loads. We're getting our books. Okay, this isn't too hard to do. So what I'm going to do is introduce another piece of state called delete counter. Set delete counter is use state of 0. And then when a book is successfully deleted, which is right here, we're going to set delete counter previous count is kind of like 0, and then we're going to take 0 and add 1 to it. And here, if I wanted to do multiple statements, we would do this. No semicolon there. And console log res data. Okay, so delete counter is going to go up by 1. And now when you change the delete counter, you rerun use effect. So here's our delete counter. When you successfully delete a book, you increase delete counter by 1. And then rerun use effects. So I should be able to inspect my console. It says book deleted, and I've lost a Brave New World. Book deleted, I've lost a Brave New World. Book deleted, book deleted, book deleted, book deleted. We are down to 1 Brave New World. All right, guys. Today was a good day. This is kind of the end of where it is. Today, again, we've got more to do, right? We've got through a couple of functions. We got a couple more to go.